Welcome back. All right, so second team I'm going to look at today is the former Arizona Coyotes. Now the Utah, insert name here, whether it's Blizzard, Mammoth, Yetis, whatever they end up going with. But the Utah-based team is going to be an interesting one to watch. Now, I talked about them not that long ago, of course, because I wanted to just give an idea for what Utah fans are getting with their brand new team. And it's technically an expansion team, although everything is moving to Utah except Alex Morello. So there you go. And the name Coyotes. So they can't use it. Can't use it. It's owned by Morello. So there you go. The record for the Arizona Coyotes in their final year in the desert wasn't bad. 36, 41, and 5, 77 points. That was an improvement of 7 points beyond what they had the year before. And again, considering the losing streak they had and how they had so many struggles at certain points of the year, that record's just fine. Their draft lottery odds, they have a 7.5% chance of drafting first. Arizona never drafted first, which is one of the reasons why I don't believe that the draft lottery is predetermined, because if it was, the Coyotes would have been gifted somebody in the desert that could have helped the team. Like, I don't know, Matthews, but yeah, it didn't happen. They have a 7.5% chance to Utah of breaking that negative streak that the Coyotes organization had. 7.7% chance of drafting second. A 0.2% chance of drafting third. They cannot draft fourth. They cannot draft fifth. There's a 34.1% chance they draft sixth, a 41.4% chance they draft seventh, and a 9.1% chance they draft eighth. So the Coyotes have not had draft lottery success. Will Utah? We'll find out first week of May. The coach of the team at the time I'm recording this, understanding that there's another coach lost his job today, but I'll be doing a news video on that later. But Andre Turney, the coach for the Arizona Coyotes, and I think he's done a good job with what he's had. I really do. I think the fact this team's been close to 500 this past season, despite all the distractions. They finished the season, I think they won 5 of their last 7. Not a bad record overall. Bill Armstrong as general manager, I think, has done a decent job of building this team up after, well, I mean, they started a rebuild before it felt like the other rebuild was done, but, I mean, things were a little different in the desert. We'll see if it's different in Utah, an area that still has some desert to it. So in goals for, the Coyotes were 16th this past season. Their attack was good. This is a team with a solid top 6. Goals allowed, they're 24th in the National Hockey League there this season. So definitely allowed too many goals. The blue line a bit of an issue. Goaltending at times was an issue as well. Ingram had a great first half. Vamilka had the stronger second half, but there were definitely some struggles there in net for this team. The playoff drought is now 4 seasons. If not for the expanded playoffs in 2020, the playoff drought would be right around the same length as the Buffalo playoff drought. The notable for them with their record is really the fact they were 19, 14, and 2 on December 29th. They were 5 games above 500, and they looked like they were going to be a playoff team, or at the very least stay in the hunt for a playoff spot. And they were 23, 19, and 3 before a 14-game losing streak, which was right around where there was a lot of talk about, maybe this isn't going to work, maybe they're going to get moved. And so players, I think it's understandable if there's concern and if it affects their play on the ice, because when you're not sure about whether or not you're going to stay in that building, stay in that location, and there's just always so much talk around that organization, I think they'll have a boost in this coming season just from not having that concern anymore and playing in the Delta Center in front of, whether it's 12,000 or 50,000 people. Sure, people always get caught up in the numbers, so why not? I'll just make up something ridiculous, go 50,000 people, why not? And yes, there's seats that have obstructed views and everything, but you're still able to get, well, almost 3 times the amount of people into that building as you were getting in the Mullet. Well, let's see, 4,600, 9,200. It is over 3 times as many people. Well, about 3 times as. You guys get my point. So, what is math? But about 3 times as many people into attendance. Obviously, they're going to sell out the first few years. I've already seen people projecting, well, I don't know, 5-6 years from now. Okay, well, the National Hockey League would much rather be in a situation where people are concerned with what's going to happen 5 or 6 years from now, rather than asking, so building now? Is there an arena now? This team is going to have a brand new arena. The money's already there. One of the agreements being the team would be called Utah rather than Salt Lake City, which makes sense. I think Utah works better. But this is a team that's going to be interesting to watch because the first half of the season showed that they could keep up with Western teams. Clayton Keller, 78 games, 33 goals, 43 assists, 76 points. I made a video on him a year ago talking about how I felt like he was an underrated star player in the NHL and a potential superstar. And I still believe that. I really do. I think that Keller's one of those guys that could get a boost from being out of any of the negativity in the discussion about the market. Schmaltz, 79 games, 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 points. Very strong run for him. Michelli, 82 games, 17 goals, 40 assists, 57 points. Then there's the youngsters. A lot of youngsters here. Logan Cooley played all 82 games, 20 goals, 24 assists, 44 points. I thought his play improved as the season went along. Dylan Guenther is fantastic. 45 games, 18 goals, 17 assists, 35 points. Really impressed with Guenther. Josh Doan looked really good in his call-up. 11 games, 5 goals, 4 assists, 9 points. Kolyachonok, 5 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points for him. Ratu, 1 game and just the 1 assist, and that, of course, is the older brother of the Ratu that is playing for Abbotsford in the Canucks organization. Soderstrom, 3 games for him this season, and there's question mark. I would think about what his future is with the organization. But keep in mind that while the coach and the GM are currently the same as what was in Arizona, when you get new ownership and when a team moves, there is always that chance things change. When Atlanta moved to Winnipeg, everything got changed. So while this is how things look right now, it may change during the summer once ownership looks at this organization and says, I think we need to make a move. And maybe it's a GM, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's both. Zuber got into 1 game towards the end of the season, so he's on the board. Young enough to be on the board. You had to be 22 or younger. Ingram, 23, 21, and 3 record with a .907 save percentage. Connor Ingram's a really good story. Really good story of a player who went through all kinds of personal drama and came out the other side a better player, and now he's a regular in the National Hockey League. Good for him. Vejmelka, 13, 19, and 2 with an .895 save percentage. And Vejmelka is kind of a big game goalie in that he seems to raise his game when he's against really good teams. And depending on which franchise you may root for, you might go, Vejmelka beats my team all the time. But this year was more of a down year from last year. But I still think he can bounce back next season. But neither of them are on expiring contracts, so I would think that tandem probably stays together this coming season. Now, on the way, they do have some prospects. I talked about this in the other video I made on Utah and what they're getting, so we'll go through this again. Dmitry Simashev, a defenseman, considered to have really high potential for maybe a top 2 defenseman in the NHL, at the very least top 4. Daniil Boot is considered to be a future top 6 forward. Connor Geekie, very likely he's a top 6 forward as well. He plays center. Maverick Lamoureux, defenseman, was seen as a bit of a reach when they drafted him, but again, he's considered to be one of their better prospects. And Michael Hrabal, a goaltender, there as well, and Hrabal's probably going to be a little bit longer before he's in the National Hockey League. Now, pending unrestricted free agents, they have some, including Liam O'Brien, because somebody asked about what about Liam O'Brien the last time I talked about Utah, and my answer to that was Liam O'Brien's a 4th liner. He's a mucker. He's a guy who's going to drop the gloves. He's not really a needle mover with the team. If they decide to keep him, great. If they don't, that's fine too. Josh Brown, Travis Dermott, and then the players who didn't play this year. Travis Boyd. Well, no, Travis Boyd played this year. He played some games. Brian Little did not. Brian Little hasn't played in quite some time. And, of course, Jacob Voracek, who announced his retirement because his contract's done. It takes a lot of that dead cap money off the Arizona Coyotes. Now, Utah, insert name of team here, franchise. So, there's a lot of money there. This was a team that wasn't using LTIR either. They were using these cap hits for these veteran players to get themselves to the cap floor. And then I believe insurance pays for a lot of the money of those players. So again, one could label that as cheating, I guess, depending on how they feel about it. But this was a team that wasn't spending money. They were going to, and the idea was that they were going to build up and become a good team by 2026. But as Ottawa will tell you, having those plans of being good later don't always pan out. Restricted free agents, you got Barrett Hayden. He's not on this side of the board. And at the start of the year, I would have thought he would have been one of their top 3 scorers, but he fought with injuries. And then when he was in the lineup, he was nowhere near as effective as he was the second half of last season. Sean Durzi. Durzi's earned himself a good extension and a contract and a raise, definitely. I don't think it's going to be a ridiculous amount of money for him, though. Valimaki. Mosier. I really like J.J. Mosier. J.J. Mosier deserves whatever they give him. Yannick's been on the verge of maybe being an NHLer. We'll see. Kesselring, really solid season for Kesselring. Highly likely they extend him. I would say Dursey, Mosier, Kesselring, get all three of them done. Soderstrom, we'll see. Soderstrom, a former first-round draft pick, hasn't quite worked out with him. And Kolyachonok, who, as I said, 4 points in 5 games, not too shabby. Now, I want to go through their history a little bit here because it feels like it's part of the narrative that people sometimes forget. The narrative is Arizona never supported the team, they never made money, yada, yada, yada. But the franchise on the ice wasn't good for very long. The first 6 seasons that they were in Arizona, in Phoenix, they had 5 playoff seasons out of 6. And guys like Jeremy Roenick were going there. And it felt like, this could work. Then they missed the playoffs for 6 straight seasons. And the ineptitude of the organization started taking over. Then they made the playoffs for 3 straight years, including a run to the conference final in 2012, before they missed the next 7 seasons. So coming out of that 2012 run to the conference final, you would think, you got to stay in the playoffs and try to show some ability to have a team that stays in the playoffs year in and year out, and Arizona was never able to accomplish that. They made the playoffs in 2020 because they were expanded playoffs due to the pause and everything else. And so if not for the fact that 24 teams were eligible to be playoff teams, they wouldn't have made the playoffs in 2020 either. And so while they haven't had playoffs since, and it's a 4-year drought for them, the drought would be much, much longer without that appearance in 2020, which, because it was the bubble playoffs, there were no fans in attendance for that. So you can't really generate a lot of excitement in the market when you're not playing at home and you're playing in a bubble environment. Now, in the all-time playoff record department, they have 3 series wins and 9 series losses. So again, they made it to the conference final in 2012, which means they won 1 round the rest of the time that they were in existence. So did the team make money? No. Was the team any good on the ice? Usually not so much. And then so that I don't think that helped. I think that actually hurt the team going forward. But now this is a team that has a lot of cap space. And I talked about this last time. I'll talk about it here. $43,264,524. Keeping in mind, Shea Weber's contract is still there at $7,857,143 until 2026, meaning they can put that on LTIR to start next season. So if anybody wants to mention, well, like I saw a comment on the other Utah video, hey, they got about $2 million in dead cap money. Yeah. Plus, if Weber's not included in that $43 million, that would mean they have about $50 million in cap space on July. It's absolutely insane. And this was the plan. This was the plan for Arizona. Have all kinds of cap space and then start adding players. Now you're in Utah. I know. Nobody's going to want to play in Utah. What are people basing that on? I've heard nobody wants to play in Winnipeg and then players sign there for long term. Nobody wants to play in Columbus and then players sign there long term. Nobody's going to want to go to Edmonton. I've heard it with Edmonton, Vancouver, at times Montreal. Sometimes you hear that about Toronto. And it's insanity. It really is. I remember a time when Florida, people were like, oh, nobody wants to go to Florida. That team sucks. So there is kind of a dark cloud there because of the fact that this was the Coyotes for so long. But I think with the amount of cap space they have, this team could be completely transformed for next year. Plus those draft picks, combined with the money they have. This is why when people are like, oh, I think they would have rather had an expansion team. I don't know that they would have. The extra draft picks this year, they have Florida and Washington's second-round draft picks. They have Colorado and Edmonton's third-round draft picks. San Jose's fourth-round draft pick. Washington's sixth-round draft pick. Then next year, they have Toronto, Edmonton, and New York's second-round draft picks, New York Rangers. The New York Rangers' third-round draft pick. And then in 2026, another Rangers draft pick, their second-round draft pick, as well as Ottawa's second-round draft pick, and a third-round draft pick from Carolina. Those are the additional draft picks. So this is a team that is filled to the brim with prospects, draft picks, everything you could want. A lot of good young players, a team that was already in the top half of goal scoring this year. So you've got to think a lot of these young players like Cooley and Gunther, their numbers are going to get better next season. Their scoring should be fine. All it is then is a matter of making sure your goaltending is solid, your defense is solid, and I think this team can make it. Yes, people will laugh at that and be, oh, they're never going to make the playoffs because they were the Coyotes. You know what? If you want to maintain that perspective, fine. But I think having that dark cloud of not knowing where they're going to play, what's going on with the arena deal and everything, I think having that gone is going to be huge. And I think players will absolutely look at signing in a brand new location they've never played in before. I think players will accept that challenge. And there are definitely going to be some players who absolutely are willing to go there. And I've seen people saying, well, there's nothing to do there. What are they going to do in Utah? I don't know. They're guys with millions of dollars. They will figure it out. If they want to fly to Las Vegas for a day and come back, they can probably afford that. It's just so weird to me, the idea of, well, there's nothing fun to do there. I don't know, if I was making $7.15 million like Clayton Keller, I might be able to put together a pretty good game of Scrabble. It's weird to me. It's weird to me that that's the way people look at it. But a lot of negativity around this organization that I think a really good start by Utah next year would help to dispel. But there's a lot of good young players here. There's just I think it's a good organization that was in a market that it didn't work. So we'll see how it goes in a market where it should. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And again, if you think that a team that has over $40 million in cap space and not really anybody who's going to demand a lot of money that will lead into that they can't get better next year, I don't know. Anyways, thank you guys so much for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you again soon.